Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Freelancer Show. This week on our panel, we have Jonathan Stark.
Hello.
And Jeremy Green.
Hello.
And I'm Reuven Lerner. And if you've been freelancing for any amount of time at all, this will probably sound familiar. You talk to a client, everything sounds great, and you give your price in some way, shape, or form. And they say, oh, that is fantastic, except can you just give us a little discount? And thus begins the road to hell. Because even with the best clients, you're going to end up having to negotiate with them in some way, shape, or form, be it on price or be it on something else. So this show, we're going to talk about what's involved there, what we are and are not willing to be flexible on, and some strategies for negotiating with clients so that you can have that horrible, horrible phrase, but appropriate here, a win-win situation. Okay, shoot me now.
Synergy.
Oh, no.
So let me phrase this in like the easiest possible way, and then we'll go deeper than this. So do you negotiate on price with your clients when they ask you for a discount?
Absolutely not. But
no.
Yes. But I will negotiate things, but not price, which is a common misconception about, a lot of people think I'm a real hard case when it comes to negotiation. I'm perfectly happy to meet people in the middle, but I will not do so on price. I'll negotiate other things. What about you, Reuven?
So I am sometimes, very rarely now, willing to negotiate on price. The way it typically works in Israel is like a client will talk to me, everything sounds great, and then they'll say, okay, we've got a deal. And then the purchasing department calls. And the purchasing department in an Israeli company exists for one reason only, which is to negotiate on price. I know what they want. And so I'll say, no, I don't negotiate. Unless I know that can't be. And I'll say, okay, I don't negotiate. And truth be told, Israeli companies expect you to negotiate. So they are sort of flabbergasted by this. And usually I don't give any ground. Like they've never experienced a company that won't. Like it's just sort of outside of the culture. But I've gotten tougher and tougher about this. And I think about 6 months ago, I worked with a company and I ended up like agreeing to a $10 discount per day. Something that was like so laughably small because the woman said, listen, if you don't give us a discount, I cannot get this approved. I must be able to show that I negotiated you down on something. So that's sort of the limit of where I'll negotiate on. But otherwise, I sort of hold my ground. And I've been pleasantly surprised to discover that after their initial shock wears off, they're willing to pay.
That's been my experience.
What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I am now at the point where I just will not negotiate on price. I've tried to in the past, and I really can't think of any instances where I was ultimately happy with what came of those negotiations or how the engagement ended up. It's just not good. I think it, especially if you're trying to be a consultant and not just a contractor, I think it sets you up to have the client see you as somebody that they can push around and that they can dictate all sorts of other terms of the engagement at that point. And that's really not where I want to be. I want to be, engaging them as equals, peers, and not somebody that they can just dictate terms to.
Right. You don't want to be seen as like an employee to be told what to do, because if you let them kind of boss you around in the sales process, it should come as no surprise when they boss you around on the project, which is where micromanaging comes from, and scope creep and all of that. So it's kind of like, if you don't want to be micromanaged later, if you're planning on standing up for yourself in a design meeting where they're telling you to make the logo bigger, you might as well start standing up for yourself in the negotiation process up front, which isn't to say you shouldn't negotiate anything. It's fine to negotiate, I think. And it's to a certain extent, people, a client might have certain realities that they need to deal with, and you can work with them to kind of make maybe help the engagement get kicked off in some kind of what, it might be some sort of a cash flow thing or a timing thing. And I'm willing to work with people on that, but I just will always steer the conversation away from the price, because if they're thinking about the price, if they're focusing on that, they're focusing on the wrong thing, in my opinion. And they are essentially focusing. If they're focusing on the price, they're trying to compare me to something else to which I do not want to be compared. So they're trying to compare apples to apples, and I will just refuse to do that. But not in a dig your heels in kind of way, more like somebody say, hey, we thanks for the proposal. We really like option 2, but we want to pay the price for option 1 to get option 2. And I'll say, there's a bunch of things you can say to that. I wrote an entire book on what to say when people ask you for discounts. And if they say something like that, the basic answer that always is appropriate is to politely decline. Just politely say no. And you will be surprised to learn that piece of backbone, if you want to call it, will a lot of times flip the switch for the person. Like, wow, this person really stands out. This person isn't like everyone else. This person isn't willing to do whatever I say. That could be a deal breaker, which probably means you dodged a bullet. Or it could make you stand out from the crowd. Be like, this person stands for something. This person knows what they're worth, or they at least present themselves with confidence in their value. So, that might be, if this is an important project, that might be the straw that sort of tips things in your favor.
So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit here, which just in that, at least in my work, because I'm not dealing directly with CEOs or like high-level managers. The people who are hiring me are typically these training managers, and they do have they have leeway over the budget. And the purchasing department may be like they're doing the final stuff, and they have nothing to do with the training. Like the purchasing department, I only hear from them basically when these negotiations happen. Like they give me a call, and after that, they might as well disappear off the face of the planet as far as I'm concerned. Like I literally have nothing to do with them. So I don't have to worry about anyone's like perception of me of being a pushover or not, because like the two things are fairly separate. That said though, like I think they've been so surprised when I say, no, I'm not going to negotiate on price. And they're like, but don't you want the work? And I say, yeah, but like, and fortunately, because my training is scheduled pretty far in advance, like I can say to them, well, I'm actually pretty fully scheduled, and if you don't want these dates, then someone else will want them, and like that basically does it. Right? Like they have nothing more to say, and they basically are going to. So, and now the other thing is that I'm going to disagree with you slightly on is, at least again in my case, it is an apples to apples comparison. I'm not trying to say that because, all teachers are the same, all trainers are the same. I would like to think I'm giving the higher quality product. But at the end of the day, like the purchasing department especially is going to say, well, like, so we won't get this Python trainer, we'll get a different Python trainer. Maybe the training manager will push for me to do it, and that's always very nice and flattering. But they do see it as something of a commodity market where we have a few different options. And it depends on sort of, how many fans you have in the company who are willing to push for you as opposed to someone else. But I don't think they feel like, it's either this guy or no one.
But it does work. But you're saying that it might not work for you, but it does work for you. So
it does work for me. Right. I don't exactly. I mean, yes, because I think at the end of the day, first of all, there aren't as many Python trainers as they would like to think. And I guess, a lot of times these gigs get to me through recommendations and referrals. And so, I guess maybe those are worth more than I thought. But I know there's lots of talking internally when I give these strong no's.
Well, think what has to happen on their end if they were going to go with someone else. Now they have to reinstitute the search. Like they already have someone who they for whatever reason, maybe it's the referral or whatever, maybe it's your marketing materials. You're already the guy. Like they know, they just want to get to the next thing. They don't care really. They just want to get to the next thing. This is a to-do on their list they want to check off in the situation you're talking about. And, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not in that situation, but that's what it sounds like to me. And they just want to get it over with and move on to the next thing and, go have lunch. So if you are going to, I think you're imagining that it would be easier to replace you than you think. Even though
maybe, although like when I was speaking to this company just like a few days ago, and they were like, well, we don't know. Like, and they even said there is another company that is cheaper than you, that we're thinking of using because your prices are high. Can you maybe give us a discount that'll offset that?
No,
like,
I would say no. You should hire the other people.
I said no.
Yeah. And what happened?
And I was totally shocked that they came back to me and said, yeah, we want you.
Yeah.
So let this be a lesson, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Because, and then I'll say that if somebody says to me, like, I will not, so I try to surface this stuff early in the conversation where I'll immediately start out. If I have for some reason have the impression that I'm essentially getting called into, quote on RFP or something like that, like that there are a bunch of people in the running for a gig, which really doesn't, after a while that stops happening. But if, early on that can happen. And if somebody ever says to me like, well, you're more than double the next highest price option, I'll say, yeah. And dead silence, right? Yes. If you're looking for the cheapest option, it's definitely not me. I'm telling you that right now. And it makes them think like, oh, all right. And again, it filters out like if you have a true price buyer who is going to go with the cheapest option, like a lot of times a government or higher ed will do this. Like they're almost forced to go with the lowest hourly rate, because they assume that that's going to equate to the cheapest, which of course it doesn't, but that's what they assume. Then fine, that's probably a bad client. It's a bad client for me anyway. It's a bad client for people who are actually good at stuff and actually can help people and aren't just showing up to dig holes, So, just be told what to do. So, on the one hand, all of your doubts, Reuven, all of the doubts that you present and the situation that you present, rationally, yeah, it makes sense that it's different and it would be hard because you're not talking to the true buyer and so on and so forth. And yet your experience is that you don't negotiate and it still you're booked solid. So, what does that say?
Right. No, I mean, at the end of the day, like I've definitely discovered that non-negotiating still works. And maybe here and there I've lost some clients as a result, but I don't think I've lost very many. And I agree with you where like those that I might have lost were just not worth it. They would have been more hassle than benefit.
Right. And the thing about clients is when they're good and when you have a good relationship, when it's a good fit, things work, they keep hiring you and they refer you to other people who are like them. So if you have a bunch of bad clients who you do bad, you do work for in an arrangement that you find is not equitable, but hey, I got to keep the lights on, so I'm working with this bad client. They recommend you to their bad friends. So you end up getting bad leads. Yeah. And it creates this vicious cycle. You want the virtuous cycle where you say, I understand, you have to have cash flow, you have to pay your rent and all that. So you do want to have a baseline of income that allows you to have the confidence to recognize a bad deal and say no to it and sort of stick to your guns. And that's how you climb out of what Philip Morgan calls the crab bucket. It's like everybody trying to pull you back down if you try and go for the lip. So, that's the thing. You have to, you're either going to keep going down or you can start climbing out.
Yeah, you definitely don't want those recommendations where the person is telling the people that they're recommending you to that, oh man, I got this guy so cheap. Mm-hmm. It's great. Like that's Yeah, run away from that.
I'm always nervous about that, by the way. Like, I'm nervous, if I give a discount to someone, that they'll talk. And I don't think they're going to talk that much, but all you need is one person to start doing that, and it's like a house of cards, it just falls down.
Yeah, well, even if you do it with one client. So let's say somebody comes along first time around, and let's just say you give them, I don't know, what's the best example? Let's say we'll do it hourly. Let's say you come to somebody, they come to you and they say, hey, we heard you do WordPress. What's your hourly rate? You say, oh, it's $100 an hour. Ooh, we only budgeted $75 an hour for that. But we have a lot of work, and if this goes well, then we can, we're going to keep hiring you. We're going to have a lot more work. And you say, well, you're thinking to yourself, well, I haven't gotten any leads in a while. Maybe I should just take this. And now, okay, great. Now you've created a customer who knows that you're never going to be able to raise your rates. It's never going to happen. Like, you're going to be $75 an hour for them forever. And they're going to recommend you to other people. Well, never. Yeah. We've already said they're going to recommend you to other people and say, make sure you fight him on the hourly rate. He'll come down to 75. So, okay, great. Now imagine you're giving fixed bids. So they say, hey, we hear you do WordPress. We've got this WordPress project. What's your hourly rate? Oh, I don't have an hourly rate. I'll give you a price for the project. Let's talk about the project. You do that. You give them $10,000 for the project. Ooh, well, we only budgeted $7,500. How about that? And you go back and forth, and finally you cave for the same reasons, because you need the money. All right, $7,500. You have now required them to fight you on every single price you ever give them in the future, because they would be remiss to not do so, because you do cave. So if you cave on price once, you've ruined that client for yourself, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
So if they actually seem like a good client, and they seem like somebody who you really want to keep around, might be a nice long-term relationship for you, you groove with them, you've got some mutual friends or something like that, the last thing you want to do is give them a discount, because they're the kind of people that you want to keep around for a long time, and you want it to be equitable for a long time. So if you sort of undercut yourself at the very beginning, you're not going to be able to keep working with this awesome client, because you can't afford to after a while. It's like, it's unbelievable. It's like super, super self-destructive.
Yeah. But there is something that you can do to not, come across as just a complete hard ass. Mm-hmm. And, I'm unwilling to give any ground. And if you're doing project fees as opposed to hourly rates, it's a lot easier. You can remove scope. And I've had great luck with that, with, people that I knew were going to be good clients. I quoted a project fee for all the things that they said that they want done. And then, of course, it's after I've already quoted a fee that they actually tell me what their budget is. And so then at that point, it's like, okay, well, it's weird that 2 weeks ago when I asked, you said you didn't have a budget and you were willing to spend as much as you needed to get it done. But okay, now here we are and we know a budget. But okay, we can start removing things from the scope, and we're not going to do as much, and that's going to get it at your budget, but you're not going to get all of the things that you asked for. And I try to find the things that I think are either not that useful for their project to actually hit the goals that they have, or things that are kind of in the nice to have column. Like I've told clients before that my initial quote was, I'm going to build this app for you. It's going to have complete test coverage. It's going to be deployed in these ways with these monitoring solutions. And then when they come back and say, oh, it turns out we have a budget, say, okay, well, the test coverage, I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to be 100%. I'm going to write a few tests that I think are the most helpful to make sure that this doesn't break in the future when, somebody else tries to work on it, but I'm not going to guarantee 100% coverage. You're going to have less monitoring on the deployment than you might otherwise want, but it's going to be live by your deadline and it's going to be within your budget.
Yep.
And, making very clear that, okay, I'm willing to meet you where you need to be on price, but that comes at a penalty to you. I'm not going to shoulder the burden of giving you everything you want for the price that you want. This has to be a two-way negotiation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally valid. It's an approach I would take too. Where the classic case of like, oh, I want option 2 for the price of option 1, I'll be like, well, okay, what I must have misunderstood something in the conversation. I thought these things were all important, or I thought, I thought that this project was more important to the organization than it appears to be. Can you explain to me why you're only willing to invest this small amount of money in what I thought you told me was a critical piece of infrastructure for the next 10 years? But okay, I get that.
You really say those things?
Oh yeah,
you really say those things?
Yeah,
fantastic.
I mean, in a sort of polite questioning way, like Columbo, like, can you help me understand, like, why did I hear you wrong? You said that this was a critical piece of the next 10 years of your business. Like, this is a foundational piece of the business. You're going all in on mobile. The future is mobile, but you've only got $5,000 to invest in that. This seems like a disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
and you're usually not going to get them to be like, oh yeah, you're right, it should be 50,000. But what you might do is find out that they're exactly like Jeremy's saying, like, there might be pieces that they perceive to be more high value from that option 2. Not everything from option 2, but there might be a couple of things in option 2 that they really want from that bundle of benefits and features. Say, oh, there's a couple of things. Yeah, you're right, but there's a couple of things in option 2 that we really, really think we need. And we're like, all right, what I will do is I will put together, I would have a little bit more conversation around that. And then I would say to them, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I just did a bad job quoting this. I misunderstood some things about, your needs. I didn't have enough information. I'm going to requote this and I'll send you a fresh proposal. And usually when I do that, it happens very rarely, but when it does, I would send them a new proposal with no options, because we've already gone through the options phase. I've already found out the budget, and I'll give them the pieces that they need for the price that they've got, to the extent that I can. But exactly like Jeremy said, it will be a lot, there will be a bunch of pieces taken out of the original option 2, and sort of, it's a brand new proposal. But now we've had a much more transparent conversation about what their actual goals are and what their budget is. And I've got a better picture of what it's going to take from me to achieve those goals and all that. So really it's a situation of them playing their cards really close to the chest in the initial meeting. And to be honest, it's usually doesn't turn out, when this happens, it's usually, I'd say 50% of the time, not usually, but about half the time, it turns out to be not the greatest client, because they weren't really that forthright at the beginning. They're very sort of standoffish and or either exaggerating or underplaying certain things. But for whatever reason, we weren't communicating well, which is usually a relatively bad sign for a collaboration.
So you mentioned before, Jonathan, that so you don't negotiate on money, like if they ask for a discount, but there are other things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So what are those things?
Well, scope is one. The scope is one, but that's actually one that I don't use that often. But I suppose that's because I don't really, I got away from development over the years. So it was more like the thing that I would normally negotiate is the payment terms. So, and this has been like just pretty much every single quote. This is my standby. This is my go-to negotiation. So for all proposals that I've given for years and years, it's been, for any kind of project, it's been 3 options, all fixed price and 100% upfront. And which is hilarious just like blows people's minds when they're used to billing hourly in arrears for work that's been done previously. But I'll say, nope, 100% upfront, and literally $200,000 project, 100% upfront. And people are like, but everyone must say no to that. And guess what? Only about 20% of clients say no to it. It depends, of course, on the kind of business, who you're talking to inside the company, and the actual dollar amount relative to their basic budget. But a lot of times people just want to lock you in, and they're like, yeah, great, fixed price, we'll take it. Boom. They'll give you 100%. Sometimes people will say, We've never done that before. How about we do 50-50, like 50 up front and 50 on completion? And then I'll say, well, I'm willing. Yes, let's talk about that. I'm open to doing 2 payments, 50-50. I'd rather not force you guys into a sign-off situation, because software, if we're talking about software specifically, there are probably going to be things that crop up after sign-off. And, there'll be weird corner cases that didn't come up in testing. There'll be all sorts of things. And, my guarantee to you is bug-free software. And I don't, once you sign off, then if you come back to me with bugs, it's going to be a change order or a new PO or all that stuff. What I'd rather do is say 50% up front, 50% in 30 days, or 45 or 60, or depending on the length of the project, but on some specific date. And then if there's a bug, I'll just fix it. There's no reason to go to your boss and say, hey, I need more money. There's a bug in the system. We forgot to blah, blah, blah. You don't have to go to your boss and, spin some story about, oh, we didn't know, we did our best, but nobody, it's like, forget about sign off. we're going to knock this out of the park. And that's the way I want to do it. I think it's better for you. It's better for me. And everybody goes for that. They're like, yeah, fine, whatever. 2 payments. I don't care if it's, on sign off or whatever, some other date. But even in the rare occasion when they would say like, nah, we really want to do it on sign off, I'll say, look, I don't care what date the second date is. You pick it. Pick any date that you think is reasonable. You think the project will be done in some date. You pick it. I don't care. But just pick the date. I can get started on Monday. And they will, without fail, they will pick a date that's before you actually finish, because they'll always underestimate how long it's going to take.
When you start a new project, typically you need things like a domain name, hosting, things like that. When I choose hosting, I pick mine for the options it gives. I like to know what I'm getting and set things up just how I like them. This is why, for your projects, you should check out Linode. Linode servers feature native SSD storage, a 40 gigabyte network, and Intel E5 processors. That's all the power you need to run VMs under full control, or Docker containers, who doesn't love that, encrypted disks, and VPNs. Plus, they have 10 data centers across the world and add-ons like backups, Node Balancer, and Longview to help you control your server costs. They also offer block storage for your static files, and you can get started with a $20 credit if you use the code FreelancerShow2018. That credit is good for 4 months on their 1 gigabyte server. That's a lot of time to try them out and see if they're the right fit for you. That code again is FreelancerShow2018. Also, if you're interested in working for Linode, they're hiring. Head to linode.com/careers to see their available positions.
They're probably surprised that you just keep going and you keep working and you keep fixing bugs.
Right.
Because they probably figure, okay, you've seen your last payment, like you're out of there.
Right. But it's not, it's like, that's not the way it works. And I price it in a way that makes them not doubt that. So like the price, they'll be like, well, your price is way higher than everybody else. We're like, yeah, because I guarantee no bugs. For 12 months or 6 months or whatever, it'd be a bug-free guarantee. And what that means is that I'm not going to cut corners during the process. I'm going to go in, and that might not be the guarantee I give every time, but in plenty of cases, I'll say, look, I'm going to come in and fix this stuff anyway, because I would feel like a jerk if you know what I mean? I think everybody's got that feeling like, oh, I'm so embarrassed by this bug. Right? So you probably fix it for free anyway. So you probably already kind of guarantee your work. You just don't make it explicit. So if they say, your prices are so high, I'm like, yeah, but I guarantee my work. You find one person out there who's going to guarantee this project is bug free at the end, and, I'll eat my hat. You're not going to find it. I'm the only guy that's going to do it. So, it's just all of these things, standing up for your price, being the most expensive, guaranteeing your work, is essentially all of this stuff projects confidence, it builds trust, and it gives them a story to tell themselves and their superiors, whoever's approving the budget, that this person is different. This person knows what they're doing. This is the experience that we want. And it's going to be attractive to the kinds of customers that you dream about. So yeah, so in terms of negotiating, I'll negotiate terms all day long. And this is it's not just 50-50 is just one way. There are other ways to I'll break the payment into months. If it's going to be, if it's a $250,000 project that's supposed to take place over the course of a year, I might be agreeable to monthly payments for 12 months, because I don't want a giant check in my account for $500,000 or something. I'll get super creative with that stuff. But at the end of the day, they're paying me the same amount, like not negotiating price.
And just to double check, because I'm sure there's some listeners who are less familiar with your work, right? These are not mom and pop operations to which you're saying, I want payment upfront or in these 2 phases, right? These are large companies where, because like when I deal with large companies, they say to me, we pay net plus 60. And I've tried a few different ways to get them to not pay that way. And they're not willing to budge, at least with me. But they are willing to budge with you or maybe in the US it's better, whatever it is. Like, you have definitely gotten large companies to pay you up front, right?
I'll tell you a story. So one time, this was a speaking gig, so it's a little bit different, but it's a story about big company making an exception. So it was the first speaking engagement, and let's say my price was $10,000. I think it was something in the neighborhood of $10,000 for a speaking engagement. It was like it was a prominent internal presentation to maybe 1,000 people, and big, you've heard of it. Like, it's a big bank that you've heard of. So I send the proposal, $10,000, 100% in advance, and total freak out flat, no way. We don't operate like that, policy, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, well, that's fine, but I have to start preparing for this talk. I have block out the calendar time. We're going to have meetings leading up to it. There's a lot of investment that is going to go into it on my end leading up to the engagement. And you'd be surprised how many people cancel them at the last minute for reasons that are out of everyone's control. So so it's 100% upfront. We don't do that. All right. And these conversations took place over email, over a course of weeks. It was a couple of weeks. So we were both kind of invested in the sale. They were more invested in it than I was, I think, because it was their event. It was starting to get closer. So they were probably feeling some pressure. I didn't really care. It would have been nice, but it wasn't going to make my year or anything like that. So as we got closer to the event, it started to get more heated. And I ended up on the phone. I got sent up the chain, and eventually I got on the phone. And I think they said, "Oh, put whatever the guy's name was, have him talk to whoever the hard ass is." Like, they were like, "Get the toughest negotiator on the phone." And I just could see this guy in my mind, in a $1,000 suit or a $5,000 suit, sitting in a New York penthouse office, right, and leaning back in his chair, and he's like, "Yeah, we get where you're coming from, but we just don't do that here. We're not going to do that. We'll do 50% up front and 50% the day of the event." And I said, "All right, but that puts more risk on me. And I'm sure, you guys deal with risk on a daily basis. That means I'm going to have to increase the price if you want to do 50 up front and 50 day up." And he's like, "All right, that's reasonable." And I said, "Okay, it'll be $20,000 for the talk, $10,000 up front, $10,000 a day up." And the guy just about hung up the phone on me, but they sent me $10,000.
Just the one payment?
Yep. Yeah, they totally did it. They were being ridiculous. They were spending so much time. These people, probably salaries in the $500,000 a year range, and a banking sort of financial institution kind of thing, that they're used to being in charge. And I was like, that's fine. I've given it some thought, and I just can't make a business case for doing this. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, we don't have to fight about it. I'm giving you some options. You know what it was? I left out one part. He said, "Our system can't do it." That was our system can't do a one payment up front. I said, "Okay, we'll break it into 2 payments, but it'll be more expensive. Can your system handle $20,000? So he was obviously lying.
I love the companies that say, "Our policy is, our system doesn't handle it." And I say to them, well, your policies were made by people, right? So the policies can probably be changed by people, right? and they're never really happy with that.
Right.
but like I say, there's like it can't possibly be that there's no way around this. It must be possible in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, if you're talking to the right, like a real economic buyer can get around this kind of stuff. Exceptions are made. Like if people are valuing what you're doing and they are making an investment in their business and and they see you as an expert. So there's some pretty big preconditions, but if those are true, exceptions can be made and will be made because they care, and okay, maybe the numbers I'm using in the type of, like a big national financial institution. Okay, maybe everyone listening to the show isn't operating at that level, but it still works. Like all that stuff still works if the business is a regional restaurant chain. Someone's going to say to you, we have a policy, or our system doesn't. And then if you have if you've got the money in the bank or the cash flow in place in it, already, then standing up for yourself and having confidence and projecting that in a polite but firm way can actually unlock a lot of these doors that I find most people just assume are just part of doing business. Like, oh, I have to cave. Well, no, you don't.
So I can't remember which of you, maybe both of you. I mean, this sort of ties into what you had said, Jonathan, about payment. But I think, Jeremy, you also said something about changing payment terms or negotiating on that rather than negotiating on, on the actual amount of money. Have you ever done that?
I've mainly just used the trick. And trick may not be the right word, but just when people balk at price or paying up front, say, well, all right, if you pay up front 100% before the thing even starts, I'll give you a 10% discount, and I will be very explicitly say that, this isn't just a blanket discount. This is in exchange for you paying up front.
Mm-hmm.
And that's worked. I've definitely had people that were at first, not loving the idea of 100% upfront payment and really push back on it. But then when I say, okay, I'll give you a discount if you do it, then all of a sudden it's not as big a deal as it was just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, the other party wants to feel like you're working with them. You're collaborating with them already. You're already collaborating with them and doing this sort of back and forth that is probably going to be the kind of thing that you have to do in the engagement. So it really sends the right message. So I'm really not anti-negotiation. It's just that I won't do it about price. I'm happy to negotiate these other things.
Yeah, I definitely heard the pay me up front and I'll give you a discount thing. And I've toyed with that in the past because a lot of my clients, and they do insist, like I've really tried every which way, but they will not pay me. For the most part, the Israeli companies won't pay me in less than net plus 45 or net plus 60. But most of them are net plus 60. And, I've explained all sorts of things. The giving them a discount for early payment, that might set off a light that they're willing to deal with. But truth be told, I figure like I'm just sort of used to the net plus 60 payment now. And I've got enough sort of, I've got 2 months ago's training payment coming in this month and last month's coming in next month. So as long as I sort of have a continuous feed, as it were, of clients, a continuous pipeline, then it's not so bad. It's annoying, but it's not so bad. That said, I would definitely prefer to get it sooner rather than later. And sort of like I guess I mentioned before we started recording, like the company I was dealing with, like their income is so gargantuan compared to mine that it's just to call it a rounding error is to exaggerate its scope. Mm-hmm. And they're just being difficult, right? They're just basically saying we have this system, we can squash you. And I mean, one company that I deal with, I get these supplier letters every so often. Dear supplier, we're so happy to work with you. And like, it's just me, Reuven, here coming in and giving you training. And, this company recently said, so they're a hardware company. And so they have direct suppliers and indirect suppliers. So I'm an indirect supplier. I was like, so what's a direct supplier? It's the people providing the sand to make the chips, right? Like those are the suppliers they're dealing with. And I am such like a dot on the pimple of the face of the company, and yet I have to play by the same rules in many ways. So giving them a discount for early payment, I think that's language that they can speak. Just saying, but it's just poor old me, little old me, why don't you pay me early? That they'll just laugh at that, or more probably ignore it.
Well, one of the things I say to people who are just can't, it's just too breathtaking for them to imagine asking for 100% upfront, is like, well, don't plan on getting it. Like you be surprised and you just get it. People just be like, all right, where do I send the check? Okay, great. But you're asking for something more than you actually need, so that you've got something that's just right there ready to be negotiated. So it's kind of like marking up your price knowing that you're going to discount it. But to me, there's something different about messing around with the price negotiation, because once you've done that, it's going to affect the rest of the relationship, like we talked about before. The pricing terms, those will, like, once you guys have worked together, or gals have worked together with this client, they're going to trust you so much more. You're going to do an amazing job. They're going to be super happy. They're going to have positive, they're going to realize positive ROI. They're going to want more. And they're not going to care about the payment terms anymore. So they're going to, next time you say, 100% up front, they're going to remember last time you negotiated or whatever. They're not going to care anymore. But if you negotiate the price early on, that's going to follow you through the relationship, because that doesn't get changed with trust as much as things like when or, how you get paid, whether it's credit card or ACH or check or whatever. So yeah, I think it's a safer, more productive thing to negotiate. I'm trying to think of other situations. What other things are negotiable in various situations?
Deadlines, delivery dates.
Oh. Yeah, that's good.
Deadlines.
Yep, absolutely.
One of my favorite quotes is, what's his name? The guy who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams. Said, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make as they fly by.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm extremely careful about agreeing to deadlines. But if somebody, see, here's the thing. Like, if this gets to a pricing thing, the deadlines gets to a pricing thing, because if I needed to commit to a particular deadline, I would, this is a whole different conversation. I would orient the proposal in a different way, because the risk profile is dramatically increased if there's a specific hard deadline. So, but certainly that is the kind of thing that you can certainly, even if it's not deadline, if it's more like estimated deadline even, or rush service, that kind of thing. So, here's some other things to negotiate. So if somebody says to you, we can't do it, we really want to work with you, we really want option 2, but we can't afford option 2, then something you can negotiate is the start date. So you could say, maybe this was true when I was doing primarily development work, the holiday season, there was seasons that were busy and seasons that were not busy. It happened every year. And what I would say is, all right, I will give you that price if we can start in October instead of in July. And, because I knew that October was going to be slow, or whatever the slow season was going to be, and have that on the calendar. So that's like a done deal, and they maybe they would say yes. That's certainly something. I've never had somebody take me up on that. They go, nah, we don't want to wait that long. We'll just pay you. But it's the kind of thing you could negotiate to sort of slot them into a time of the year or some part of your business that is not at capacity.
Yeah. And I've had good luck with kind of using deadlines, hard deadlines that are set by the client as justification for 100% upfront payment. Basically make the argument that, look, we've only got 5 weeks to get this whole thing done. And I'm pretty sure you guys want me to spend as much of that 5 weeks as possible actually working on your product and not chasing your accounting department to try to get them to cut me that check that is now 2 weeks late, and That's been really surprisingly convincing. I've made that argument a couple of times, and both times been kind of surprised when they're like, "Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, okay, we'll get you a check out today." And it was like, "Okay, great." That's it.
Yeah. Here's another one for rush service. If somebody does have a tight deadline, or what I refer to as an aggressive deadline, then you can justify the 100% up front because you're going to have to go get a bunch of bodies to help you fill in, to maximize the odds of hitting this deadline. If you want me to be able to guarantee this deadline, I'm going to need a budget to go out and get some people to help me on my end to do this up. And they're not going to be taking net 60 from you. So, one time I used the line, I'm not in the business of making business. I'm not in the business of loaning money to my clients. So, it's like, I need that money up front. If you want this, if your hair's on fire and you really need it by Black Friday, then we need to pour some money on this. And I need the money now because I'm going to be going and getting contractors or whatever. I'm going to utilize an assistant to take a bunch of other things off my plate so I can focus on this exclusively or whatever. And that is convincing. So I feel like hopefully this is translating. I fear that there are people listening that are like, yeah, but none of this applies to me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say to that is it applies to everyone, but at a different scale. So you need to have some level of security financially in order to be willing to say no to work that comes through the door. So yes, you need to have some kind of level of financial security to be able to feel comfortable walking away from a job. And you might do something that goes against this advice to do it, but it's dangerous because it does potentially lead to that vicious cycle. So if you feel like it's utterly impossible to do this, you might just be weighed down at the bottom of this whirlpool of bad clients leading to worse clients, leading to worse clients. So at some point, the way up is to start politely saying no to people. You might be pleasantly surprised that they end up agreeing anyway. And now all of a sudden you have more profitable work with a client that's less stressful, that's less demanding, that's not going over your hours entries with a fine-tooth comb every week and wasting your time with administrative stuff. Also, another thing to do in addition to giving yourself some kind of financial footing from which you can kind of have this degree of confidence. The other thing is to get more leads. If you're getting a lot of leads, it's even if you don't have a ton of money at the moment, if you're getting a lot of leads, you'll feel like at any moment you could just pick one of these leads and just like say yeah and get started. So probably I'm going to guess that anyone listening to this that's just like you guys are smoking the drapes. There's no way my life will ever look like this. There are two things you can do to get yourself to the point where you can start saying no to bad work, basically saying no to discounts. One is get some kind of financial security, and that might mean cutting your expenses for a little while, putting some money in the bank. It might be having it might mean having a full-time job and doing this on the side as a side hustle. It could mean having a sort of icky hourly client that you don't have the greatest relationship with, but you only work for them 20 hours a week. So you still have energy left over to do some of this other stuff, to give yourself a financial basis and do some marketing to attract more leads. Because once you start getting a lot of leads, then you can be a little bit more cavalier in how you deal with them and a little bit more picky about which ones you work with.
Yeah, I think the whole thing hinges very strongly on being able to negotiate from a position of strength, as they say.
Yeah.
And if you are just living paycheck to paycheck and, are really worried for your financial well-being about any particular prospect not working out, it's really hard to negotiate from a position of strength and to, be prepared to walk away, because really that is kind of the biggest trick of the whole thing, is being able and willing to say, no, I can't do it for that, and I won't. So, good luck finding somebody that will.
Mm-hmm.
And that that changes a good number of minds, but you have to be willing to say that and confident to say that.
Totally agree.
Right. I mean, I want to agree with everything you guys are saying. No, and I am agreeing with the way. It's not like I want to, but I can't. I agree with everything you're saying, and I just want to sort of back it up even more. Like, I'm sure when you start off consulting, you're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. What? I'm going to get calls from clients, and I'm going to be able to say no to them, and I'm going to dictate to them dates and times and rates. Yes, it will happen. It takes time, right? It's not going to happen from today till tomorrow, but it will happen. And when it does, it's a nice feeling. And along the way, you can sort of ratchet up that position of power and the perception that people have of you in these small ways. And it gets better. I mean, it's not always perfect, but it's often pretty good.
Yep.
All right. Maybe we should go on to some picks. Jeremy, what you got this week?
I'm going to go with the same pick I had last week. Increaseyourconsultingrates.com. Oh, that's not quite right. I just screwed that up. Increaseyourconsultingfees.com. That's an email course about how you can deliver additional value to your clients, largely just by making things that you're already doing more obvious.
Should I grab increaseyourconsultingrates.com?
Oh, maybe. If you want to steal some of my G.
Jonathan, what you got?
I'll pick Learn Your Lines. So it's a short PDF I wrote that has, I think, 9 or 10 different answers to the question, can I get a discount? Because you'll get all different kinds of variations on the question, can I get a discount? It'll be like, there's the, we're a nonprofit, can we get a discount? There's the, we haven't got the money, can we get a discount? There's the, we just don't do things like that, can we get a discount? There's a bunch of, I'm pretty sure it's 9 different types of discounts. And then I give you exact lines to say back depending on what situation you're in addition to a bunch of other, essentially lines for you to learn for those sort of tricky situations when a client puts you on the spot. They ask you a kind of aggressive question, or they have some sort of thing like that. Discounts is the biggest piece though, because it's something that you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get asked. Is this your best price? Can we get a discount? It's going to happen. They're going to have all different reasons. And there are a bunch of ways to reply to that. And I give you the exact ways to do it. Some even I'll give you a casual way to do it, and I give you a more businessy way to do it, depending on what kind of business you're in. But so you can check that out at jonathanstark.com/pricing. And and Learn Your Lines is one of the options on that page. And that's it for me.
Excellent. So I have for this week the first half of a 2-part pick. So I'm going to pick transistor.fm. I have been toying for probably about 2 years now with the idea of doing a podcast for training. And so Justin Jackson, who does a lot of product stuff and encouragement of people to do products, he's decided, I think we might have mentioned this best, like he's going to do a SaaS. And his SaaS, along with a guy named John Buddha, who I don't know, but I've been interacting with, they decided to set up transistor.fm, which lets you create and distribute and do all sorts of other stuff to podcasts. Now, I have no experience with any other podcast uploading facility and so forth. And it is definitely new, and it's sort of in the beginning stages, and there are a few things that are broken, but everything that I reported them as being broken, I guess only one thing so far, he said, oh, I'll fix that. And within an hour or two, it was fixed. So it still has the feel of really nice, small, responsive startup. And so my pick is Transistor, which I've been impressed by so far. And the second half of my pick will probably come next week when I think I'll have enough episodes recorded that I can provide you with a URL for my podcast about training, which will go into more detail that I've been able to go into here. So there you go.
Cool.
Nice.
And that is it for this week. Guys, this was great. worth the price, paying full price for this podcast.
Paying full price. Yeah.
And by the way, folks, like if you come into my courses, the humor is just as bad, so you know what you're getting into. Thanks, guys, Jeremy and Jonathan, and thanks to all of our listeners. And we will be back next week on the Freelancer Show.
See ya.
See ya.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.